Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another NCNW Economic Empowerment webinar designed for women, but we welcome righteous brothers as well. Tonight, we're going to hear some very valuable information. We've got two illustrious experts in women's economic empowerment to greet us, and then we'll hear a word from Goldman Sachs about their very exciting 1 million Black women initiative. I want to go ahead and introduce our first speaker. She is a highly accomplished young woman. On March 1st, 2021, Natalie Madeira Cofield was appointed to serve in the Biden administration as the Assistant Administrator for the Office of Women's Business Ownership. In this role, Ms. Cofield serves as a senior executive, providing executive oversight, management, leadership, and championship of female entrepreneurship. As an assistant administrator, Cofield will oversee the largest expansion of the Women's Business Center network in the history of the SBA across its nearly 140 center footprint and oversee more than $70 million in federal grant making to support the growth of women-led firms. Cofield is a seasoned entrepreneur and executive with over 15 years of experience in securing diverse capital, building strategic partnerships, and leading state and local economic development programs to incubate small businesses and their expansion. Cofield brings extensive experience in developing programs to support entrepreneurism and has secured more than $22 million in capital to invest in ventures and small business programs and initiatives. She is the founder, and perhaps best known as the founder and CEO of Walker's Legacy and the Walker's Legacy Foundation, which provide entrepreneurship programs to support thousands of multicultural women entrepreneurs. Prior to this role, Ms. Cofield served as CEO of the Greater Austin Black Chamber of Commerce. She has been named by Entrepreneur Magazine as one of the 100 most powerful women in business. The Root named her one of the most influential African Americans in the country, and she has also been named among the list of women who mean business and 100 most powerful Washingtonians by the Washington Business Journal. You will not be surprised to learn that she is a graduate of Howard University. She was a Gates Millennial Scholar, and she was a National Urban Fellow. And you certainly won't be surprised that she's a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Welcome, Ms. Natalie Madeira Cofield.
Janice, thank you so much. I'm so glad you got that Delta Sigma Theta in there at the end. We are grateful for that. And Dr. Cole, I see you. It is an honor to share the stage, Janice, with you, with Dr. Cole. And Paulette, I look forward to hearing from and learning more about your work. As Janice mentioned, my name is Natalie Madeira Cofield, and I have the honor of serving as the first African-American woman to be appointed Assistant Administrator for the Small Business Administration, leading the Office of Women's Business Ownership. Why is this important? It's important because for tonight's discussion, Black women are the fastest growing entrepreneurial segment in our nation. And it is important that we have representation both at the leadership stage and at the helm of organizations and efforts to support women entrepreneurship across the country, as well as that we have folks who are in office who understand the perils and the circumstances that Black women entrepreneurs go through as they endeavor to build businesses that both employ and catalyze their communities. I want to take a few minutes to just talk about a few of the major priorities and initiatives that have come out of the Biden-Harris administration that do just that. This is about sharing information. One of the things that I've learned since I've come into this role is there are so many programs, there are so many initiatives, and there are so many different ways in which initiatives and efforts are funded. But if our community is not aware of them, then they have failed us and they have failed at their job. And when I say they have failed at their job, I'm talking about the programs and the initiatives. And so this administration has one of the largest communities of Black women appointees in the history of the federal government. And we as Black women in this administration will also feel that we have failed our community and have failed you if we don't share this information with you. So let's first start and talk about where we are right now in our national economy. We are in the recovery stage of our national economy. We are still dealing with the Delta variant of COVID-19, but we are certainly in recovery. But what we did learn from the pandemic was how disproportionate the distribution of funding across African American and underrepresented communities was to support disaster recovery through COVID. And so as such, when this president came into office, our administrator, Isabella Guzman, the American Rescue Plan was passed, and it included $100 million worth of funds to support an initiative that I've had the distinguished honor of establishing for SBA, which is the Community Navigators Program. The Community Navigators Program is about helping the administration, the Small Business Administration, connect with local ecosystems, local community partners, and local organizations such as NCNW and others that have a deep-rooted understanding, awareness, connection, and fabric within different ecosystems across the country that we can work with. We have our own portfolio of resource partners that we continue to support and will continue to work with, but we know that there are a number of underconnected communities across the country for which even filling out the application for PPP, and now that we're in the recovery phase, filling out an application for a microloan was very tedious for them. They may not have had a business center close to them. They may not have been aware of technical assistance and training that could be provided to them. So this is the first opportunity for the Small Business Administration to really build out its portfolio of organizations that are working with what was legislated, and that is underrepresented, targeted small business communities, inclusive of women, veterans, rural communities, urban communities, minority businesses across the country. And so that is one of the first initiatives that came out of the SBA, in addition to the disaster recovery funds that we have been releasing, just to better position our administration to support, not just through this moment of disaster, but through the moment of recovery, which we will continue to build through as we build back better under President Biden's plan around. Next, we still have funding that is available for shuttered venues. And what is shuttered venues? If you have a local museum, a local theater, a local facility, if you yourself are in the talent management business, if you are working in film and theatrical production, there was $16 billion that was available for small business owners who were impacted by COVID-19 and the inability for them to have performances or for them to have concerts. And so we understand that and want to ensure that more Black businesses have access to these resources. If you are in a situation where you work in or have a business in one of the industries that I've just mentioned, I really encourage you to look into this grant program. This is not a loan. This is a grant. There are 16, people ask all the time, how can I get a business grant? Where can I get grants for my small business? Well, right now, the SBA actually is providing grant funding for small businesses. And there are $16.8 billion worth of funds that remain for shuttered venues. And we will continue to distribute shuttered venues funding until we have run out of funds. We did go through challenges with the Restaurant Revitalization Fund because of our prioritization of Black and brown businesses, underrepresented businesses, women businesses, and veteran businesses, which in some instances stalled some of the progress that we endeavored to make there. So we encourage you to become more aware of this program. It was $28.6 billion to support the restaurant economy. We know that Black businesses disproportionately are being built in the service economy, and in the service economy, we have the restaurant industry. And in fact, 35% growth for Black businesses over the last 10 years has been made just in the food service industry. And we also understand how that was impacted by COVID-19. Again, that is another grant that was made available by the Small Business Administration. But we also have a portfolio of initiatives and programs that support businesses regardless of whether or not they were impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, and 365 days of the year. As Janice mentioned in my introductions, I have the honor of leading the largest women's business center network in the history of the Small Business Administration, with nearly 140 women's business centers in every state across this nation. That is 140 women's business centers that are working to support nearly 60,000 small businesses owned by women across the country. I will say that nearly 56% of those centers are working with women of color. And it's my mandate and my mission to try to encourage more women of color to learn about and be aware of these centers and the resources that they provide. Prior to Juneteenth, the president was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and made a really significant announcement. He announced an increase in federal government contracting and spend with small disadvantaged businesses from 10% to 15%, which is the largest federal procurement spend with small disadvantaged businesses in the history of our government. And this is huge. This represents nearly $100 billion worth of funding to support small disadvantaged businesses. And if you are on this line and you are a small business owner and you fit within the disadvantaged business categories, one, and we encourage you to get certified through programs that the Small Business Administration has to offer. And two, we encourage you to use your license to hunt, because that's all a certification is. It's a license to hunt. You do not start a business and get certified and then the floodgates open and you're doing business everywhere. It's the ability for you to actually go out there and hunt. And so we encourage you to get certified, and those who are certified to become more proactive and active around engaging with different federal government agencies that now have a mandate of increasing their federal spend. For all the women on the call, since this is about 1 million Black women, we want to encourage more Black women to be certified as a woman-owned small business. You can be both a small disadvantaged business, an 8A business, and a woman-owned small business. You can also be certified through the Department of Transportation's Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program. We have a moment where our intersectionality gives us an opportunity to have multiple certifications and vehicles for which we have the ability to compete, but we can't compete if we're not aware. And so that's why it's important for us to have access to these opportunities and to these resources that the president and the Small Business Administrator are making a priority. The president on his first day in office signed an executive order around equity. He didn't do it yesterday. He didn't do it today. He didn't do it the day before yesterday. He did it on January 20th. And it has charged every federal agency with assessing the way that it looks at programs that it has to offer to the American public and to communities across the country. I happen to be the chair of the Equity Task Force for the Small Business Administration and responsible for looking at the ways that all of our programs, from our micro lending programs, 7A, government contracting, and our technical assistance and education programs, are connecting with or not communities across the country, looking at pockets and ways and pockets that were underserved and ways in which we can do better. We have a requirement to produce this within the first 200 days of the president's term in office, and we're on target for that. But again, I only say that from this perspective. The last administration that we were in didn't prioritize equity at all. And we have a unique moment in time to take advantage of the fact that Black women were so instrumental in the election of this president and of this administration. And if we do not establish businesses, if we do not certify our businesses, if we do not engage in the marketplace that has been opened for us, we are doing ourselves and our communities a disservice. We have an amazing and phenomenal secretary for the Housing and Urban Development Department, Secretary and my soror, Secretary Marcia Fudge. Why is housing and urban development important to me at the SBA? Because we know that there are two big wealth creation mechanisms in this country. One is home ownership and the other one is business ownership. And when we have the ability to be a party to both, it is critical. And so what we have been doing through this administration is trying to find ways to keep people in homes and to allow them to have equitable access to buy homes, regardless of whether they have student loan debt, which we know, again, disproportionately impacts communities of color, or not. And so, I encourage you to look into the programs that are being offered through HUD, which I can tell you from having an opportunity to meet and talk to Secretary and Storer Fudge are just incredible, and they're innovative, and she intends to push the needle on all that can be done with that agency to support communities across the country. And then lastly, there are two important things that I want to share. Women disproportionately make up the largest community of caregivers in our country. Whether we're caring for our immediate family, we're caring for our extended family, we're caring for our church and faith-based family, we're caring for our sorority family, we're caring. We are always caring. And so the care economy is one that this federal government has invested $39 billion in to support making childcare more affordable. In my past life, I had a program that was designed to support single moms around childcare and giving them access while they went to learn new skills. We know that childcare has the ability to support a family, stand up opportunities for family, or to thwart a mom from having access to opportunities for herself and thereby for her household. And so when you have a $39 billion investment in affordable childcare for this country announced by Vice President Kamala Harris, as a business leader, I think, one, women of color have disproportionately been in the service space around healthcare and providing social service supports in childcare. But I also think, how can we as business women create businesses in the childcare industry to take advantage of the $39 billion that has been invested in by this federal government to support making the families more affordable for Americans. So as you hear about these opportunities, I want all of us, since we're on here today to talk about 1 million Black women in entrepreneurship and economic development, and I know the mandate of this initiative is vast. It includes housing, it includes healthcare, it includes entrepreneurship, it includes education. And so I'm making mention of things that I know are happening across this administration that fit into each one of those respective buckets, including the fact that the vice president stood and made the biggest investments in community development financial institutions in the history of our country, with $1.3 trillion invested in CDFIs. Well, why does this matter? Because we know that CDFIs are the ones that actually are providing financial capital to small businesses and communities across this country. They disproportionately fund women-owned businesses, Black-owned businesses, rural and urban businesses across this nation. And so when we invest in nearly 900 CDFIs across the country, we are providing the financial capital to invest in small businesses across this nation. And the absolute last piece is this. The infrastructure piece sounds big, sounds lofty, sounds like it doesn't touch anyone on the call, possibly. But if you are in the space of development, if you are in the space of construction, real estate, trade, logistics, supply chain logistics, if you are building consulting firms around procurement, around all of these areas, this is one of the biggest opportunities for you to get in the game and to use your license to hunt, your certification, to be a part of what is building back better. We have set the stage for equitable opportunity and access. And now it's about what can we do, including being a part of forums like this and making this information more readily available to everyone, so that now, something is churning and you say, I'll go look that up. I'm going to go research that. I'm going to go connect with this group, because I want you to know these things. This administration wants you to know these things so that you can take advantage of these programs. If you do not, they do not succeed. And with that being said, I appreciate you all having me. Janice, I know I have some time for a few questions, but I just want to stop there. Thank you.
Natalie, thank you so much. I don't know if our audience can can be heard through this system. Mr. Johannes, are we able to take any questions?
If you would like to ask a question at this time, please raise your hand digitally and we will try to get you audibly heard.
I will say this while we're waiting for a question to come in. If you didn't hear anything else, I heard 39 billion invested in the care economy. I heard 1.3 trillion invested in CDFIs, community development financial institutions. I heard 16.8 billion for shuttered venues. Those are some mighty impressive numbers, Ms. Cofield. Thank you for sharing that information with us. For the 29,000 women who attended at least one NCNW webinar over the past 2 years, we know that there are few persons in this audience who are capable of being certified and capable of going out and hunting for what it is that they are searching for.
I love it.
Ms. Cofield, I don't know if you know that I work for the Small Business Administration as well, and I know you have to leave early. But one of the issues that I had as regional advocate for SBA was bringing people to the table. Small business owners very often are hand to mouth and very often think they don't have time to attend seminars or events that will help them. And so I think this is a great partnership. One of the things that NCNW can do and has done is to bring women to the table to get information about the resources. So what you're doing is very, very, very exciting to me, and we thank you for your partnership.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paulette. And one other thing I want to mention is that this administrator has re-stood up and reinstituted the Council on Underserved Communities, which is an advisory body to the administrator around issues and concerns, challenges and opportunities presented by underrepresented communities. Now, we know this last administration that wasn't even really a thought at all. So to reinstitute this is very important because we want to, as Paulette mentioned, hear from the small businesses about and advocates for small business about challenges that they have and needs that are particular to their community, which is another reason why investing $100 million in the Community Navigator program is important, because what it says is, you know your community better than we do. We're not going to try to go create a one-size-fits-all response to how we can better serve the community. We want you to partner and hub and spoke model with organizations across the country and tell us how we can work best with you using your culturally knowledgeable nodes, your expertise, and your connections to the Small Business Administration to get the job done.
Ms. Alfie, if you'd like to ask your question.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you so much for such wonderful information. Great. My question is, how long does it take, or would you recommend the beta self-certify for the WSB on their website? Because I submitted an application on July 10th. So how long does that take if you do the self-certification process and upload the documents? Or is it better to find an organization that will walk you through that process?
You can do both. So actually, SBA has partnerships with organizations where you can go in person to have someone support and walk you through the process of submitting your application, and they actually certify your business on behalf of the SBA, and in some instances on behalf of private nonprofit organizations' own certification programs as well. I would say anywhere from 30 to 90 days for the time frame for when you can expect to hear a response back. If it gets past the 90-day mark, I would reach back out. I will say that we've had a record-breaking number of women apply for the Women-Owned Small Business Certification Program. And during this time right now in our recovery phase, we've seen record numbers for everything related to entrepreneurship and to small business. So if it takes a few more days than expected, please know it's not because we're not interested in getting more women certified, but it has to do with the backlog of eager women who are excited about opportunities to engage with the federal government. Any other questions?
We have a question here that's being typed in that question section about how did I learn about the certification and what are the steps?
So there are a few steps, including, what I call having your ducks in a row. All the documentation for your small business, your articles of incorporation, your certifications, your accounting and financial documentation, and you can find the entire kind of list of requirements on the SBA.gov's website. You can also walk into one of our 136 women's business centers across the country and ask them for support. I'm more than certain that across those who are joining us today, we have a center in your state at a minimum for which you can make a call and ask someone to assist you in the process of walking through the certification circumstance and just general business development and technical assistance support.
Well, Natalie, we want to thank you for being with us this evening. We know that you will keep the lines of communication open so that we can make sure this type of information continues to reach our members and our friends and supporters. We wish you Godspeed in your new endeavor. We know that you're already making a great difference and will continue to do so.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here, and good luck to everyone. Bye-bye.
I promised you that we had 2 expert speakers tonight, and the second one was appointed to be a regional administrator for the Women's Bureau in the Clinton administration. The programs really have not changed a whole lot since then, but what has changed is our willingness and our ability. You heard Natalie say that Black women are forming businesses as fast or faster than any other demographic group in the country. Well, tonight, Paulette Norvell Lewis is with us. She is a workforce development professional whose career as an advocate, career coach, and in providing placement services for women and girls spans over 40 years. Ms. Lewis was appointed to serve as regional administrator of the Women's Bureau for the Southeast region by President Clinton. As regional administrator of the Women's Bureau, she promoted policies to advance economic security of working women in 8 southern states. She is currently chair of NCNW's National Program Committee, someone on whom I rely for advice almost constantly. She is immediate past board chair of the Catholic Student Center at Atlanta University. She is the founder of a very successful national nonprofit organization to recruit and place minority women in management and technical jobs in private industry. Her consulting firm's clients included the King Center, Procter & Gamble, the National Board of the YWCA. She also served as chief of staff for Mrs. Coretta Scott King for 6 years and is acting executive vice president for the National Council of Negro Women. Please join me in welcoming a voice of experience, somebody who's been there and done that. We're so fortunate to have her as one of our leaders, Paulette Norvell Lewis.
Thank you so much, Janice, and good evening, everyone, and thank you for participating in this important, very important webinar. I was very excited by the information that Ms. Cofield brought to us and the list of resources that will come to us through this administration. We're grateful to Goldman Sachs and to the U.S. Small Business Administration for partnering with NCNW on this very important initiative to increase the number of women-owned businesses and to provide them with essential resources. I'm going to give you a little bit of a historical perspective on some of the things that Ms. Cofield mentioned. And we are grateful that she is in the place that will be helpful to us. I had the privilege of working for the Small Business Administration under the Clinton administration as the first African-American regional advocate in the Southeastern region. Now, the role of the regional advocate is to get in touch with all small business owners, as many as possible, to find out what their issues are, what concerns they have with operating their businesses, and to bring them to the national legislative body, to the Congress. So it was during my tenure that the Women Mean Business Initiative was launched during the Clinton administration, and the women's business centers were first funded. It was a very exciting time, and it was very exciting to be able to play a small part in the effort to increase the number of women business owners in the South and to help facilitate the participation of the largest number of women in history in a White House conference on small business. And as you heard from Ms. Cofield, if you're not in the game, you cannot win. So you've got to get involved. The work to support women-owned businesses has not been stagnant since the 90s, but the support funds and resources from government and private entities has been anemic, to say the least. Thank goodness that has changed. In our work with the Women's Bureau, my colleague and friend Beverly Beavers Brooks and I also had the privilege of funding financial literacy initiatives at women business centers in the Southeast and the Southwest. And in addition to the women's business centers, you have a resource that's connected with the universities called the Small Business Development Centers. You can look this up on Google, the Small Business Development Center, if you don't have a women business center in your city. The important thing is to know what questions to ask so that you get comprehensive information. It was my experience at the Small Business Administration, however, that that brought into focus the importance of financial literacy. In working with African American small business owners at SBA, I learned anecdotally that the lack of financial literacy was one of the primary reasons that African American businesses often fail. Many of the business owners had great ideas, innovative business concepts, but they did not understand lending practices or the importance of credit, savings, and investments. You have to bring those to the table. And Ms. Cofield mentioned another important thing, that now SBA is making grants. One of the things that we have thought for years and years and years is that SBA was in the grant business. SBA was not in the grant business, and SBA gave warranty to loans to small business. So it's never been in the grant business. This is a very new thing, so you should really take advantage of that if you're trying to start a small business or if you're in a small business. We did not really understand how money works in our society or how the SBA's works. I also learned that people of color were only being informed about minority or women set-aside programs. And we were not being given information about the comprehensive menu of SBA products and services. And this is why I say it's important to know the right questions. Go to the SBA website. It has historically been one of the best government websites that there is. Although this steering may have been unintentional, it often limited the opportunities and potential of the success of minority businesses. Finally, I learned that certain banks were more open to funding women business owners than others, and that people of color experienced barriers to lending no matter where they went. As a result of what I learned at SBA and my lifetime commitment to economic stability of women of African descent, I was able to successfully convince our leadership to make financial literacy and economic empowerment NCNW's primary program focus in 2015. Women business owners generate $1.8 trillion a year and employ over 500,000 people. And you heard from Ms. Cofield that 66% of those are started by African American women. In spite of this, there is still much work to be done. When we limit the contributions of over half the population, women, we limit the economic stability and growth benefits for the entire population. NCNW has been chipping away at this work for 5 or 6 years now, and our financial literacy, millennial entrepreneurs, and economic empower program initiatives, our data support that these programs have been well executed and effective. We are very grateful to Ms. Mathis and the NCNW staff for their tireless work in this area. I know that the partnership between Goldman Sachs, SBA, and NCNW will be a dynamic one. and will provide invaluable support and resources to women business owners. I hope that the 500 plus NCNW members and friends registered for this event will stay with us throughout this empowering journey. And I thank our partners again for their commitment and investment in Black women business owners. Thank you. Can't hear you, Ms. Mathis.
My dog started barking, so I muted myself. But I just want to thank you for putting NCNW during my tenure on the road to working with small business and women-owned business enterprises. We are eternally grateful. You actually provided the curriculum, set us on a path, and have been guiding us and giving us inspiration ever since. So thank you very much for that. Well, at this time,
invite these women to come to the table. It's plentiful.
And don't ever say that your vote doesn't matter, because you've just heard a graphic description of what a difference an election can make. Elections indeed do have consequences. I always get a lot of pleasure out of this next chore. It's not a chore at all. It is introducing my boss, my shero. Dr. Janetta Bench Cole is National Chair and 7th National President of NCNW. She is the only person who has been president of both Spelman College and Bennett College. Spelman and Bennett, as we know, are the only two HBCUs exclusively for Black women in the United States. She served as director of the Smithsonian Museum of African Art. She served on the board of Coca-Cola Enterprises and Home Depot. She is a noted anthropologist and author of several books, including her latest work, Racism in American Public Life, a call to action, a call that she is eagerly embracing for herself, as I can attest. She takes that call to action seriously and recently met, along with 7 other civil rights organization leaders, with President Biden and also with Vice President Kamala Harris. She is an expert in the field of inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility, and she is part of the team that won an Academy Award this year for the Pixar animated film Soul, where she served as a cultural advisor to the production. She too is a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority and is a devoted mom, sister, grandmother, and wife. Dr. Janetta Cole.
Thank you, Sister E.D. And if I ever hear again that I'm your boss, I'm going to have a fit. Well, my NCNW sisters, brothers, I know at least 2 righteous brothers are with us, because I saw Brother Joshua and Brother Johannes. You know, there's a reality in our country that I want to speak to. It's a reality that should haunt any American that believes in justice and equality. The reality is this: in America, the richest country in the world, poverty is a horrific reality. It's a reality in the lives of millions of Black women, men, and children. It is a reality in the lives of our Latina and Latino sisters and brothers. It's a reality in the lives of indigenous people. And yes, it's a reality in the lives of white Americans. How well we know that Black women are disproportionately affected by poverty. In fact, Black women represent 22.3% of women in poverty in our country. That's edging up on a quarter of all poor people in America. Now, one critical way that this inequality can be addressed and eventually put to rest is, of course, by attacking unemployment of Black women. But I want to address the fact that Black women who are employed on an average must work an additional, listen to me please, 7 months and 3 days to earn what a white man earns. When I hear myself giving statistics like that, it is shocking to me. And I know it is shocking to you. In addition to the fact that Black women are disproportionately affected by poverty, we must ask the question, what is the root cause of this? And without going into some of the complexities of this situation, we can say in summary terms, this is what systemic racism and systemic sexism brings into the lives of our sisters. Indeed, today, Black women in the United States who work full time, year round, are typically paid just 63 cents for every dollar paid to white men. I've quoted that figure twice because I want to underline the inequality, the gross inequity that is taking place. Why should an individual who works hard receive less for her labor than someone who we will assume works hard but receives more because of the color of his skin? Clearly, the commitment that Goldman Sachs has made to invest in the welfare of Black women is a mighty sign of hope. Hope that with this kind of massive investment in our welfare, one of the ways that we will see a difference in the lives of Black women will be in the pay that they receive for the work that they do. Black women, our founder said, are a measure of a nation. Until we as Black women are paid equally for the work that we do, until Black women cease to be disproportionately poor, then it says about our nation what we cannot be proud of. We must close the pay gap. And closing the pay gap means that ultimately we close the wealth gap. And perhaps most important of all, we rid ourselves of the injustice that Black women suffer.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cole, for always being a fount of inspiration. Well, we've had a historical perspective from the Women's Bureau of the Small Business Administration from Paulette Norville Lewis. We've heard about what's going on there today and all the many opportunities, and we've been inspired and challenged by Dr. Cole. We've got one last piece of business to attend to, and that is to find out what is the Goldman Sachs 1 million Black women program all about, and where do we fit into that? Here to guide us through it, as only he can do, is one of the shining lights of our generation or any generation. He served in the Obama White House. Can you imagine being spiritual counselor to Barack Obama? He has a book comprised of meditations that he shared with the president. That must be some bedside reading. But as CEO of Values Partnership, we are delighted to welcome Joshua Dubois to tell us more about the Goldman Sachs 1 Million Black Women Initiative and where we fit. Joshua?
Wonderful. Executive Director Mathis. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, Dr. Cole, Executive Director Mathis, and all the NCNW members out there, good evening. I cannot tell you how much of an honor it is to be on this line with you all, speaking to the historic and active and thriving and essential NCNW. You all don't need me to tell you that the organization of Mary McLeod Bethune and Dr. Dorothy Height and the inimitable and kind and brilliant and innovative Dr. Janetta Besh Cole, you all are at the heart of how we will move forward as a country, particularly in this challenging moment that we're in, coming out of prayerfully twin pandemics of COVID-19 and racial injustice. You all are advocating, you're connecting, you are speaking up for those who can't always speak for themselves. And I'm so glad to say you speak for Black women, but you also speak for Black men too. And quite frankly, that's why I am here. You know, what is this brother doing here speaking about a program called 1 Million Black Women? Well, I'm here, one, because our firm, Values Partnerships, which is co-founded and led in part by my wife, Michelle, who's our president, along with our dear friend, Joteka Edie. We're leading strategy and public engagement for this initiative. But I'm also here because Black women should not always have to speak alone. You know, sometimes it's important for our brothers to stand alongside and lift up the needs and the importance of investing in Black women. And so let me tell you a little bit about this initiative. 1 million Black women, and we're so honored to say that NCNW is a partner, a formal organizational partner. We're starting with working with you on a listening session, a series of listening sessions, and moving hopefully into conversations on investments. This is a 10-year, $10 billion effort to invest in Black women. You heard that right. Billion with a B, and it's real, y'all. It's a very real thing. This is leveraging $10 billion in investment capital and $100 million in philanthropic capital to invest in the specific challenges that Black women face and solutions that solve those challenges at scale. So I'm going to get into what some of that means in practice, but that's sort of what the overall initiative is. But I believe we have a video, Executive Director Mathis, that will describe this a little bit, and then we're going to pick back up from there. So watch this video with us, and then we'll have more conversation.
So I often tell this story about my mother. When she came off the midnight shift, because she worked in a paper factory, she took her clothes off outside because they smelled so bad. And she would come in, she would whisper in our ear, "All things are possible. You can do anything." Now, I would guarantee you my mother did not know what subliminal messaging was, but she knew what positive thinking was.
Black women are the key. They're exhausted. They're holding up the world.
Let's be candid about this. Black women are central to the Black community. They're heads of households. They're our mothers. They are our daughters, our grandmothers, our nieces, our wives, our partners, our lovers.
There is no task more important. There is no community more innovative. There is nothing more transformational or more needed at this critical moment in our country's history.
There's a real need for job creation, not for handouts, but for hand-ups.
We are not going to
advance racial equity, and see the progress that we want to see if we don't focus on Black women.
We looked at what are the causes, what are the sources? Is it education? Is it healthcare? Is it just jobs and making the economy better and giving them more economic opportunity? Tell me the one thing. Well, mic drop. It's not one thing.
It is just common sense to invest in our mothers, daughters, sisters, and friends, empowering the women who have invested so much in us. And that's why Goldman Sachs is partnering with organizations led by Black women, listening, learning, and making the largest ever capital commitment, $10 billion, to fuel the futures of 1 million Black women and their families. $10 billion that will be invested in ideas, organizations, and institutions that impact Black women, starting at birth and at every key moment in her life. Access to prenatal care, early childhood education, broadband critical to closing the homework gap, and loans to enable high-achieving students to attend top colleges of their choice. And later, as these women move into the next phase of their lives, access to capital for their own small businesses, to have quality preventative health care, and ways to save for their children's future and their own retirement. The more that we can empower these important community anchors that Black women are, the more that we're going to have progress together and as a whole.
You know, it's audacious, right? 1 million Black women, that's audacious.
If you can give people an opportunity and give them the kind of support that they need, perhaps the kind of mentorship that they would otherwise not get, they're going to do great things.
Invest in Black women.
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 Wonderful. I think the video may have cut off a little bit there, but I mean, just a teaser. I hope that's as exciting to you all as it is to me, Miss Norvell Lewis. I see you clapping. I'm feeling the exact same way over here. Same, Dr. Cole, and so that is what this is all about. Let's get into some of the details, though. How does this work in practice? What are some of the areas that Goldman is focusing in, and how can you raise some ideas, some suggestions for investments? Again, Goldman only has 10 organizational partners on this. Those are people that are leading listening events and are pipelining ideas. NCNW is one of those 10 organizational partners. And so you have a unique pathway to get your investment ideas in front of Goldman Sachs. And if Goldman don't listen to anybody else, they listen to Dr. Janetta Bech-Cole. I promise you that. And so please listen, please do send your ideas in, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But I believe we have some slides, Executive Director Mathis, that we're going to start going through now. Let me know when you all see those.
Are we able to share the slides?
And let me see if I can.
Oh, there they are.
Phenomenal. So we'll, again, the initiative is called 1 Million Black Women, $10 billion through the lens of Black women in investment capital. That's those are investments that lead to growth in $100 million in grants. So we can go to the next slide. Before we got started with the investments, we actually started with research. That's, of course, important to do. Goldman led a major study called Black Womenomics that really focused on understanding what the drivers are of the wealth gap, what Dr. Cole spoke about. There's a few key pieces here. One, should not surprise anyone that earnings gap drives the wealth gap. Dr. Cole spoke about that statistic about how much more Black women have to work to just catch up to other parts of our society. And so much of it is the earnings gap, and the wage gap is significant for Black women certainly compared to white men. But there are some other drivers of major challenges for Black women. Childcare is a huge issue, and affordable childcare as the rates of the expense of childcare increases around the country. Financial literacy continues to be significant, with 25% of Black women indicating that a mutual fund is safer than a single stock versus 60% of white men. And so just the sense of knowing kind of the safe investments out there. And there's a significant gap in home ownership as well. Homes occupied by Black women are 2 times more likely to be inadequate than for white men. Blacks are much less likely to own high return assets than whites, largely as a result of limited access to capital. And so those assets that are multiplying our wealth are often not in the hands of Black folks. And then health outcomes. Black women experience worse health outcomes, partly due to access to quality care, and more than 1/3 are likely to cite health issues as a barrier to work. And so this is the landscape that we're coming into. We can go to the next slide here. So what do we do about it? Well, Goldman, based on this research, is focusing its investments in 7 areas: healthcare, increasing access to affordable quality healthcare; housing, financing the creation and preservation of affordable housing; education, increasing access to affordable early childhood education, K through 12, and certainly secondary and post-secondary training; access to capital. We hear this over and over again, making sure that Black women entrepreneurs can get low interest loans to grow their business in the same way that everybody else does. Those lines of credit, right? When when the receivables are stacking up, how can you make sure that you have access to capital? Job creation and workforce advancement, financing workforce development. One of the things we're hearing a lot is not just training, but retraining. Say you started in one career, but you want to go to another. Black women don't have as many opportunities to do that. Digital connectivity, making sure that everyone has access to broadband, affordable, fast internet access, which is still not accessible in some places. And then financial health, including financial education. So those are the 7 focus areas overall that Goldman is seeking to invest that $10 billion in. We can go to the next slide. The way that we are choosing investments, and this is not an overstatement, I'm going to get to some of the investments that have been announced thus far, is literally through these kinds of sessions and conversations and through our partners. We've hosted 4 major public listening sessions. Dr. Cole has been a part of those. We just had one last night with Steph Curry from the Warriors and his mom talking about early childhood education. We've hosted 27 smaller sessions and engaged over 13,000 people. The vast majority of them are Black women. And we're hearing from them about investments, about projects that should be invested in, about potential grantees that Goldman can follow up with. And Goldman is receiving those, vetting those, and making those investments. And so we really are working with our partners to understand what's out there and what can be invested in. They take these sessions very, very seriously. In fact, the recording from this we're going to be sharing with Goldman Sachs, and that's how we identify the investments in many cases. We can go to the next slide. Let's talk about what some of those investments are and sort of the scale of them. And this is just a couple, and I'll actually add a few more. I will say that this is not, although one big thing that Goldman is seeking to do is create a larger access to capital pool for Black women, they're not, the $10 billion, as you might imagine, is not necessarily going to be split up into a number of individual small business loans. They're seeking, for the most part, to fund projects that impact a lot of Black women at one time. Then that doesn't mean that those projects can't come from people on this line right now. We all are creative and have ideas about how to put together a bigger project. So, for example, a couple of the early investments, they did a $45 million loan facility to the New York City Economic Development Corporation to support safety net hospitals in New York City and hire more Black women frontline healthcare workers, right? These healthcare workers are responding to COVID-19 and everything else they have to respond to. And so they have offered a low interest loan to the city of New York to hire more healthcare workers. They are supporting Archer Towers, a mixed use housing development in Jamaica, Queens in New York, to the tune of $290 million in equity to finance the construction of mixed use residential housing. We can go to the next slide. They're doing a $3 million capacity building grant to the Center for Maternal Health Equity at the Morehouse School of Medicine. They're going to be focusing on training people for respectful care of Black women, training perinatal professionals to support Black women who are pregnant and parenting, and then a rural residency track to identify more rural residents who need prenatal and preventative care. And so that's a good example of a grant to a healthcare institution run by a Black woman to support the needs of Black women. That's all on the investment side. They're also doing individual grants to specific nonprofits. The first round, and this is the first of a 10-year effort, to an organization called Birth Center Equity, that's supporting Black women-led community birthing center, the Columbus Urban League, funding an incubator for Black women-owned businesses, and a number of others that you see here. I believe that is probably the last slide. We can go ahead and take down the presentation now. The idea is we want to know from you, one, what the biggest challenges are that are driving the wealth gap and setting Black women behind, and then two, what some innovative things that are going on that you may know about that could solve those challenges, both nonprofit interventions that are happening now, successful businesses that need more fuel to scale, as well as new ideas that you may be thinking through, in particular when they are aligning partners, right? And so a national organization like NCNW connecting with the local government to do something significant at scale that will impact a lot of Black women. We don't have the answers. If you say, Joshua, what does that mean exactly? Well, we don't know exactly yet, right? We need our partners to present ideas to us about the types of interventions that will impact Black women, and that's what Goldman is seeking to fund. So that is what the 1 Million Black Women Initiative is all about. The way to operationalize this is to actually send your ideas into for our friends at NCNW, who will pass them on to us, who will share those ideas with our team at Values Partnerships and Full Circle Strategies and Goldman Sachs, and then we will follow up with you accordingly. So let me pause there and start answering any questions or sharing any further details that I can.
You will be receiving a survey from NCNW after this particular webinar that has the questions that 1 Million Black Women have asked us to pass on to you.
Wonderful.
Before the questions begin, Brother Joshua, I just have to say, as many times as I have heard $10 billion, it continues to shock me.
Yeah.
I mean, the quantity of resources that Goldman is putting toward the welfare of Black women is simply phenomenal.
Yes, ma'am.
And I want to say that one of the reasons this happened, you won't be surprised, is because at Goldman Sachs, there are Black women who have done very well, but they are committed to doing good.
That's right.
And so it's one of the most exciting initiatives. That word seems too mild. I mean, this is a movement.
That's right.
That any of us have been a part of. And so my sisters, put on those thinking caps. You know, think big. Think big. Think beyond the specificity of your own work and just dream what would make a revolution in healthcare,
yeah,
in education, in housing. Pass those ideas to us, and we're going to send them fastest way possible to Goldman Sachs.
Yes, ma'am. Indeed, Dr. Cole, I couldn't agree with you more. And let me give you a few more kind of examples of what, as Dr. Cole is saying, think big. Let's say you know a Black woman locally who has a phenomenal financial literacy training program. She's going church to church, organization to organization, and empowering people in a unique way with financial literacy. But that's in one city. What you could tell us is, she is amazing. She needs to scale. That needs to go national, right? And that is the kind of thing it's a private sector business. She's making money, but she's also doing good at the same time, right? Goldman can invest in someone like that to scale. There's another effort in Texas right now where I think it's in Houston and Dallas in particular, where they found that a number of lower income Black women were having trouble getting to their jobs because they didn't have access to a car, an affordable car. And so Goldman is coming in. There's an organization that is helping Black women get very low interest car loans, and being more flexible about the credit. You know, sometimes when folks don't have that credit, they're only offered predatory loans. And so they're helping Black women get low interest car loans, and Goldman is backing that up with a credit facility. So it's those kind of things, an organization that is a company that is doing well and just needs some fuel to scale, go regional or national, an effort to impact people that are struggling through poverty at scale. Those are the kind of things that that I think Goldman is actively looking for right now, and we would love to hear from you all about similar efforts.
I'd like to just say, Mr. Dubois, I was so pleased to hear the that you had associated health with poverty and with business. When I was working in this area, one of the things I would say is that financial health impacts emotional, mental, and physical health. And once we lose that, we're out of the game. So if we don't address those health issues that impact our ability to focus and think and move forward, then, you know, the rest is lost. So I was just very pleased. I think it's very insightful and innovative for you to put that in as well.
Yes, ma'am. No, I thank you, and I really appreciate that. And it's essential. We all know that when we hit bumps in the road related to our health, it impacts everything else, right? Everything else seems to just kind of come sometimes to a stop, and you have to figure out how to work your way around it. And unfortunately, sometimes that happens for Black women because they don't have access to compassionate care, to people that really see them as a whole person. My wife and I have 3 little ones, 5, 3, and 1. And so I'm praying they don't bust in this room right now and let me finish up this webinar before they come on in. But our 1-year-old, we were not expecting, but he's a pandemic baby, and we had him at home, in part because of the care that we were receiving. And we're not home birth folks necessarily by any means, but the care that we were receiving at the place that we went in this, you know, in the early phases of this pandemic was so woefully inadequate, right? They didn't, you know, that we had to find another option. And that unfortunately happens for far too many Black women. Now, thank God we had the resources to pivot and to, you know, get some support at home. But for those who may not have other options, that can stop them in their tracks. And so, Ms. Norvell Lewis, I couldn't agree with you more. Health is essential to everything else. And I think a big part of this initiative will be investing in healthcare.
We have several questions coming in.
Yeah, please.
We'll try to get through them as quickly as possible. The first question is, how do they submit to the criteria that Goldman Sachs is looking for?
Sure. So the first thing, honestly, is to pipeline this through our friends at the National Office of NCNW, and that will come to us. I will also, if I could give the administrators of this conversation a link to the 1 Million Black Women website. You can also submit there as well. So is it possible to put something in the chat if I sent it over to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm going to put that in the chat. There is a submission on the website as well. But please, the reason why we're saying work with NCNW, because we need to know that it's coming from NCNW so that we can track it and give sort of priority to what's being considered. And so there is a submission here, but if you submit, it's important to note that you are working with and through NCNW. And there's a organization field here. If you want to put your your other organization or your occupation, feel free to do that, but also add NCNW to that as well. So the 2 ways: 1, through NCNW, we'll pass it on to us, and 2, you can do it on the website, but just make sure that you're noting that you're coming in with NCNW.
Ms. Hickson asked, she heard the statement about loans for education. Does that mean that there's scholarship money for undergraduate and graduate students?
We just, it's a great question. We just had a higher ed roundtable recently, and we're actively looking at expanding scholarships. And so it's something that is very much on the table now. We haven't announced the next round of grants yet, but I believe that scholarships will be a part of this. But the other thing is we got to do something about outstanding student loan debt right now. It is crushing way too many people. And so, you know, I love our dear friends in the Biden administration, work with them closely. I'm praying and hoping and advocating that they will do something on that as well. But I believe that has to be a solution. Quite frankly, we don't have the best solutions outside of federal intervention for student loan debt right now. There needs to be an improved public interest forgiveness program. That thing has stalled over the last number of years, and so we need to improve that as well. But we're looking for ideas. The answer is, I believe scholarships will be a part of this. Nothing has been announced yet, but if there are particular scholarship funds that you think we should be aware of, please let us know. We were on the line with our friends at the United Negro College Fund and others, so it's definitely something that we are looking at. And if I can ask our brother on the line, I'm trying to see the best way to. Okay, I see the chat now. I'm going to put the link to the 1 Million Black Women website in the chat as well. And then once you go to the website, go to share, the share button, and that is where you can submit your interest and idea.
There are several people asking the same question. We're trying to consolidate them here. And it sounds as though if you give us that link, we can make sure that everybody gets that same thing. There's also a question about home ownership and conducting the research for low income housing for seniors. Can you explain more about that or go into more depth about home ownership?
Yeah, I think there are a few key parts of this that we're actively looking at, and again, open to ideas. One is just quite simply the cash for down payments, right? And that is the biggest hurdle for so many people. And the research that we've seen does not necessarily show correlation between the ability to come up with tens of thousands of dollars for a down payment and ultimately what you're able to afford in a mortgage. We think that is, I believe there's some flaws in that logic, that if you can't come up with $60,000 for a down payment or $100,000 or $30,000 or whatever the case may be, then you must not be able to afford a mortgage. That's not true, because oftentimes people's rent is more than what the mortgage would be, right? And so I think one of the things that we need to do is think about creative down payment facilities that support Black women who are trying to raise the money for a down payment. And so that's one of the areas that we've been focusing in. There's also just simply the creation of affordable housing. The great folks who are leading this on the Goldman side, Dina Powell-McCormick and Margaret Anandu and others, they do a whole lot of thinking about how we can have more mixed-use housing programs around the country. One of the first investments, as I showed, was on a mixed-use project in New York City. And so affordable housing and the construction of new housing, but I think we have to do something about this down payment issue as well.
There's a question is, how can other organizations partner with the Goldman Sachs initiative?
Great question. So one is actively doing listening sessions. You could do self-hosted sessions where you are asking your membership what the biggest challenges are facing Black women and what creative solutions are. When you do that, you can send those solutions on to NCNW and to us as well. So that's one thing. The other thing is, on the nonprofit organization side, we're always interested in learning about innovative organizations that to be considered as grantees, right? So these grant investments are not the same scale as a capital investment. The capital investments are millions and sometimes tens of millions of dollars. Sometimes the grant investments are lower than that, but they're still meaningful investments in nonprofit organizations. And so feel free to use the web form to send us ideas of what your nonprofit is doing, and Goldman will take those into consideration. Any other questions?
Okay, it seems as though some people are having an issue with the link. So we will just tell you it is goldmansachs.com, our-commitments/sustainability/1-million-black-women. So if you did not see that in the link, we just said it for you, and it will also be recorded in this video that will be on our YouTube channel and our NCNW website within a few days.
Indeed.
Are you planning on partnering with any local government and regional agencies to help with health and community resources?
Yes, the answer is absolutely. We want and need to. We have an upcoming listening session with mayors, actually, particularly Black women mayors, but other mayors as well around the country. And I will say, to some extent, some folks on the line may be closer with your own city government, your mayor, your city council than we are. And so feel free. Not everybody knows about this initiative yet. Feel free to say, hey, Mrs. or Mr. Mayor, did you know about this $10 billion Goldman Sachs investment? We need to get a piece of this and bring some innovative ideas to the table. So we would encourage outreach to local governments, both at the mayoral level as well as city councils, to solicit innovative ideas. So absolutely, the local government piece is a big part of this.
Are the questions
Does
still?
the nonprofit business have to be pre-existing, or can it be a new nonprofit to work with this?
A lot of this has been focused on organizations that have proven that they're an effective intervention for Black women and giving them some accelerant. That's not to say that no brand new idea could be supported, but I will say that the majority of things that we're focusing in on are, that organization that has shown that they're improving the lives of Black women and girls, and they just need a little bit more fuel for that fire. And so I'm not closing the door by any means, and it's certainly not for me to close that door. But what I will say is there are a whole lot of organizations that are started out there that need that growth capital to grow, and that is where most of the focus has been.
Joshua, we want to thank you for being so generous with your time tonight and so clear in the instruction that you're giving us. I'm sitting here jotting down ideas. I don't know when I will have time to write them up, but there are lots of things that we can do when we have that kind of fuel that you brought to the table tonight. So we wish all the best. We will definitely keep the lines of communication open. I want to say thank you to our audience. Just about every Thursday night, we will find something here at NCNW that will enrich or inform or inspire you in some way. Just about every Thursday night at 7 o'clock. So make it a date. Join us and think about joining NCNW. We appreciate you. We thank Paulette Norvell Lewis. Always grateful to Dr. Cole. It has been my pleasure, Janice Mathis, Executive Director, to be your host this evening. Thank you and good night.
Good night, everyone, and bless you. Thank you, Dr. Cole. Thank you, Executive Director Mathis. Bye-bye.
Good night.